I'm actually glad to be between our two government speakers, our two civic friends, because I'm not going to dwell on this too much today, but I hope that my talk sort of reinforces the importance of working with our collaborators and our partners in government. These are the people who, on our behalf, are trying to make our roads safer for cyclists, are diligently working on our behalf, and they deserve our support and our thanks for sometimes being in the middle of that hockey melee. I love that. I've actually loved that. I've got a symbol. It's not quite as effective, but I am going to talk a little bit about the coalition, but not very much, on the assumption that you can go to our website and find out more about what we do. We're a provincial cycling organization. As you know, our roads are governed provincially for the most part, and so we're focusing our efforts on advocacy and policy work at the provincial level. We work with the municipal sector. I see our friends from Peterborough today. We helped them with host a bike summit in March. That was tremendously successful. If you want to know more about it, you should ask them. I thought it was great. And they're a good group. So a little bit about our mission as a cycling movement, because everybody in this room is really part of that, whether you're an advocate, city government official, someone that works in health promotion, or wherever you may be. We're all on the same road here, and it's important that we row together, which is essentially what this is all about, hopefully. A little bit about us at the end, but somewhat on collaborating for success. So this is what we don't want, and this is some of what we have right now. This could have been the hockey melee, but I chose a different image. So this, which is what we want, right? Encouraging safer roads for all, and seeing more happy people like this nice fellow who was on one of our rides last year. And that's more of what we want to see. You know, it's interesting, a couple of weeks ago, Gallup, which is an international polling firm, did a survey on, you know, every country in the universe, basically. It's their annual happiness survey, and no surprise the Danes were in first place. I think it's no coincidence that they have the highest mode share, and they cycle. Could it be? I think so. You know, lest you think they're resting on their laurels, of course, I was at Fellow City in Copenhagen last year, and it's remarkable. I don't know if anybody, some of you may have been in Copenhagen. Show of hands, people who've been. It's remarkable. It's remarkable, isn't it? It really is like nirvana. I'm like, wow, is this what heaven's like? This is what happens. So it's quite remarkable, but even they have modest goals like getting to 50% from their 39% now. And you know, Cities for People is where they're at in livability, which is accounting, I think, for their happiness quotient. This is Jan Gale. Many people know him. He's an urbanist, internationally world-renowned, also a disciple of Jane Jacobs, incidentally. Spent some time here in Toronto. And I found this quote that he had in a report that he released last year with the Institute of Transport Development Policy on the 10 principles for livability. Because they noted in their report that by 2030, 60% of us, 5 billion people, live in cities. And that's a remarkable number, and something we should all be concerned about. I'm not going to go through these, obviously, but they're quite good, and you should Google them, because I thought they were really interesting. Quite pointed, but effective at the same time. Deliver the goods, cruise control. To the point of collaboration, you know, connecting the blocks, get real. Also very good. So I run those past you for your advisement. And again, won't go through them one by one. But the important piece of this is how do we get there? Well, our job as cycling advocates, again, all of us, some of us doing this on a full-time basis, it means changing hearts and minds. Public, politicians, and that's a daunting task. You know, anybody that works in the private sector will tell you that if you set out to do a public awareness campaign, it's big dollars these days. Television advertising, even if you're going viral, there's still a cost to that. It requires a lot of heavy lifting, and so we can't do it without collaborating and working together. Because social reinvention means leveraging partnerships to create change, and that's what we have to do. And really, for me, I've had a fortunate career, some of it spent in the not-for-profit sector. And you know, United Way, as mentioned, part of my background, is one of the most successful non-for-profits in the world. And one of the great things that I learned at United Way was really how to work together successfully, how to build communities. So here are some tips I think that work well, and things that I've learned along the way that I think serve us well. Managing our brand as advocates is really important. We need to model professional and successful behavior. You know, it's, I have this saying, and I use it a lot, so I'm going to repeat myself. If politicians don't create bandwagons, they jump on them. And I see a few smiling heads. So, I mean, this is really the people-powered movement that we need and that we're all interested in creating, because the role of government in society has changed. In the 1970s and 80s, when government played a different role in our society, when things like participation, I see it coming back, which is great. and we had a greater role for public health even in our society. That role of government has changed, and it's now been undertaken by NGOs working in partnership with government. So it's a sea change that's happened, and it's important for us to be those good partners. So government wants good partners, but us in the non-for-profit sector, we need them too, because we can't do this work alone. And we may be leaders and catalysts in the movement, but we're also partners. So working together, we can harness the passion of people, and in our world, that's communities across Ontario. But I think it's important that we start at home too, when we think amongst ourselves as advocates. How are we collaborating as advocacy organizations? How are we working together and cooperating? Are we focused on the right things, important to be strategic? Are we finding common ground, and are we articulating the right message? I think these are all really important elements when it comes to thinking about partnering. It's important for us too because we have few resources to really pick our battles effectively. I've never found it effective to yell and scream at politicians. Some people do. It's never been my way because I think it's more important to develop those kinds of relationships that are built on joint respect, that allow you to agree with disagree, because that's going to happen. And even in public, I think it's important to respect the person. And you might not like their ideas, but that's an important principle, I think. We have to manage our reputation always. People like positive ideas. It's interesting, the rise of Jack Layton in the polls. As a political junkie, I'm more than casually interested in that. And I think one of the things that keeps coming back in the media commentary about Jack's rise in polls is his positive sort of voice. And I think that's a very interesting development, because the noise about negativity and bickering and so on, nobody likes that. People like positive, and if you're positive and effective and professional, then people are going to work with you. I mean, it just stands to reason. I think the other thing that we need to do as cycling advocates, too, is broaden the conversation. One of the things that I learned from Jan Gale's speech at Velocity in Copenhagen last summer was, and it sort of hit me and stayed with me, he spoke to the plenary session. He's a magnificent speaker, and he said, you're not just cycling advocates, you're really building community. And I borrowed that from him, and I really sort of expanded on it, because when I talk about the work that we do, it's about cycling, but it's much more than that, I think. We're partners in building community and enhancing livability. We're all about enhancing competitiveness and economic prosperity, and of course sustainability. During my time at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, which, as you probably know, is one of the nation's most effective lobbying organizations, having worked in the business community, chambers across the country are really important partners for us in this work, because they're focused on economic prosperity and livability and tourism, all of which cycling touches. So when you think about the conversation, it's not just about lines on the road, it's about working together to make our communities more livable, because let's face it, in a global society, people can live wherever they want. And when you're fighting to keep your tax base and you're looking about competitiveness internationally, making your community more livable is where it has to be.